Does this work? While they are doing this, I can give you a little bit of introduction. We are talking about aging, but it's not really, you don't need to be old to listen to that, because you will get older as soon as you are born. So it's about how to take away, and in some way we address the same topic as Tom does. We want to take out the taboo and the ideas of what couples are, for instance, the love and everything. We want to take it away from aging. And originally, we are doing this, the Wisdom Factory. We are broadcasting live and doing interviews with people, integrally informed people, and want to bring it in a normal language to people who just jump in and by chance find us on Google Hangout, or we also do invitations. But our dedication is to bring topics out, and we have already done about business and about crisis. Elsa Malouf and Said Dalabani and John Freeman were there with us, and you can see it. Get this iBooks or PDF. So this was the introduction. And I'm Heidi, and
I'm Mark. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we want to start by, asking you to keep in mind a couple questions. We're talking about getting older. At some point, probably we all thought, "Oh shit, we are." And I don't know when it happened to you, but keep in mind, what does that mean to you to get old? What are your fears? What are your hopes? What is it, your experience with loved ones who have gotten old, who have died? How does that fit into your view? What do people in general think about it? What's the world think about death? What's your culture think about death? All of these things can enter into us and get really busy with our minds. And so I want to start next then by just telling a couple brief stories, mine and yours. And when I started to think about getting old, it happened first when I was 50, which was a pretty good run, actually. Not think about it till then. But at that point, my professional job technologically became obsolete. And I was without a career. And I had to spend the next 12 years until I could take early retirement and doing things I didn't really care about. And that some of them were pretty menial, pretty degrading. So I retired as soon as possible. Finally. In about 3 or 4 months, I realized that I had been really good at waiting, but I didn't know shit about retirement. I really didn't. And it became a spiritual crisis, which fortunately quickly led me to some great teachers, and I would probably put the top of the list there, Ken Wilber. And I learned the brief history of everything. And that allowed me to use that retirement time in a very fruitful kind of way. And some years went by where I was really able to develop. But I did not like where I was living with all these other retired people in this plantation in Florida where everybody had to be at least 55 in order to live there. And the public notices were up every month about who died, who's in the hospital, blah, blah, blah. Fortunately, in conversations with integral people online, I met Heidi.
on Facebook.
On Facebook, yes. And short story, 4 months later, I was winging my way to Italy, where she was and where we now live. So,
Yeah, and in some way Mark was speaking to the topic of ageism. Have you ever thought about ageism? How we define and judge people about their age, very young people and middle-aged people. For me, ageism came in when I went to Italy to learn opera singing. And when I finally understood by self-study, consciousness study, body study, lost conference, I did a workshop about voice. When I finally was able to sing really well, I was 40. And with 40, forget it. Even with 30, I mean, it's no way. So, I mean, this is already more or less our stories, you know? And we want to dive into seeing what it means in the different levels of development. And I want to leave it to him because it's his baby.
Help! But you know, when we look back, you know, through the colors, shall we, the history of the colors, if I can use that shorthand, you know, starting at beige, you know, what does getting older mean at beige, you know? Well, we don't know because nobody got old then, so to speak. Very few people really reached a great age because your survival depended upon your individual activities, your ability to get the basic necessities of life. There wasn't any real social organization to help you do that. So it was a long, slow slog, as far as we can tell. We might be wrong because we weren't there. More. Okay, and then we go to the tribal stage, you know, and this was a huge improvement. And people had the security and the comfort and support of people they were related to or that they knew quite well, and people could get old because there was food, you know, and there was knowledge, and the elders became respected and important people in those communities. It was a huge leap up. It was tribal, but it was much better. But then at some point, as we all know, somebody said, I'm not listening to those old farts. I'm going to do what I want. And the hell with you, you know? And then we're in the red age. And at this point, of course, if you could keep yourself on top, you could stay on top. But most people, of course, weren't on top. And they had to find some way to be in that society, basically by submission, you know, or lording it over someone underneath them. So old age tended to be rare, even at that time.
Yeah, and also this thing with the missing emotional control, you know, the knife was in the pocket, and when there was some discord,
you know,
somebody left the field and somebody didn't.
It's like walking through the wrong neighborhood of a large city.
Yeah. And then we come, of course, that's replaced by the traditional, shall we call it blue or amber, stage. And huge improvement at this point, because there was a huge group of people in which you were included in that circle of care. And people could reach levels of respect at virtually no matter where they were at. There was definite hierarchy, but there was respect for your position in that hierarchy. And actually, they started to have hospitals. They weren't really great in terms of medicine, but they took care of people in their old age when they were not able to take care of themselves, when families couldn't handle them anymore. Spiritual solace, great advancement. Yeah. And then we replace that, of course, with the modern age, with Orange Age. And we went quickly to, within a couple, 3 generations, to understanding that if you were not economically productive, or you didn't have the money to be a good consumer, Orange didn't know what to do with you. You know, you were out of the game. Your history, you know, the great insult, great American insult. Absolutely. Your history, yeah. And so you go, you end up, in the worst cases, in these nursing homes where you're just warehoused bodies, you know? You get fed, you get washed, and the very basic kinds of things, but there's nobody loving you, touching you. It's all, you know? It's I worked in a couple of these places after I lost that position. And one was public, one was private. Private was worse than the public. Yeah, and just minimal care. Just 5 minutes, oh, next person, 5 minutes, oh, next person. Oh. Anyway, that has been softened by green, fortunately. And so now green would like to, oh, let me help you across the street, my dear. Yes, you know? Oh, yes, yes. And we'll arrange, you know, parties for you older people in the evenings. We'll have dancing. Somebody will play the banjo. You play the banjo? Okay. Yeah.
Or bingo.
Bingo. Big one. Big one. Oh, yeah. And so it's better. It really is. But they never asked us. What did we want, you know? And the fact is, we don't know what we want. We don't have any model for how to live in these last 30, 40 years, which is probably as long as we work for a living, is raising family, buying houses, cars, etc., all of that business of middle life. And whew, what do we do? And this is where we need to ask you. This thing about ageism is, we have ageism because we have age. You know, in the 60s, racism got defeated, not eliminated, but defeated. In the 70s, sexism bit the dust, as they say. And then in the time since then, we no longer make a big deal out of sexual orientation, for example. And all of these marginalized groups, thank you, Green, take their turn coming out of the closet, you know, and it's wonderful. Okay, thank you, Green, but now leave us alone. We got some work to do. You know?
Yeah, and I don't know how far we are with the minutes. Our
I can see
invitation is we need to ask questions, and already in young age, how should it be? How do we want to live later? And we invite you to join our project to co-create a think tank about that, you know, and maybe even on going through the quadrants, there's no quadrant there, but the institutions. I think at this point of the time, we cannot expect the state or whoever do it for us. I think we have to express ourselves, and when we don't want to be taken care for in the orange way or in the green way, we have to create us. And he is a little further than me, and somebody is in his age, somebody is very young. We have a good chance to create something for our life in older times. And a little bit, when we have time, it's here also the question to you. How do you imagine to be in the 4 quadrants? What is your vision? And what we forgot to say is, since Orange, we have an overflow of older people with the medical advances. Before there were relatively few older people, but now the lifespan has so much increased. I think in a few years they say there are more older people than over 60 or something than under 60. So it is a huge amount of people who needs to find a new sense in life, a new purpose in life, because being just delayed from work, I mean, I never was employed in this sense, I always created my own life, but many people, we know that when they are in pension, they die in 3 years. So how can we co-create or help each other to find a new purpose in life?
Yeah.
These are the open questions, and I invite you to come and tell us your visions.
And I'd like to know how much time we have left.
You're fine. We've got about 10 minutes.
Okay, so invite you.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Clara. I realized by my curiosity for older people, I felt always very attracted to older people by their rhythm, I think. And I realized that there is a lot of preconceptions between the ages that is very disturbing. For example, I realized from older people that there is a jealousy, like, oh, it was so hard for me and you were born in such an easy time. So this jealousy doesn't help contact at all. And from the other side, there's this preconception of, you're kind of boring, you know, you have nothing in front of you. But this comes really from an older time when the future was tomorrow and the past was yesterday. But now that we're living in a time that we share today, like this whole age, like is not relevant anymore, like in relation. But I joined this group because I'm really curious how we can make points of meeting. And I'm going 3 times a week to an old woman and just sharing time and like wanting to encourage other young people to do so, but they're just not interested. And older people are just not interested in sharing time with younger people. So I'm sharing that question.
That's good. You mentioned the reverse ageism that we experience too. And that is how old people feel about young. And we watched 5 minutes. We watched a video a couple of weeks ago about a young person who was still a teenager, and he had created a very successful online business. And the business community had no idea what to do with him. He didn't tell people he was a kid. Absolutely. But what do you do when you want to open a bank account and you're a minor? You know, you need a bank account to run a business. You know, and it was very, very difficult. So I think we need to keep in mind that this is just simply not victimizing older people that goes on. For example, we victimize people and all their segments of life. There's all kinds of ways that we have these preconceptions. And I hope that we just don't want to take more from the young people. We want to give more, and we have more to give too. Yeah.
Okay, very quickly, because I see other people want to speak. My focus since retirement has been to change the way long-term care is done. And so I've written an article which is on Enlivening Edge, and it's about taking long-term care to Teal. And so I encourage you to read it. My ideal is that even those of us, elders, who are in long-term care facilities and may have dementia or physical limitations, that one day we will be reintegrated into society fully as our capacity or our abilities allow us to be. I like Dr. Al Power's, Dr. Al Power wrote the book Dementia Beyond Drugs, and he talks about the empty glass and the full glass, or sorry, the empty, half empty versus half full, and he says, forget about that. The glass is refillable.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wanted also to say that we need to go out ourselves out of the victimism.
Yes.
I'm too fat, I'm too I don't know what, and really come into the acceptance of what we are at that point. And when we always try to stay young with a whole lot of colors on everywhere, that is also a sort of ageism, because we don't accept as we are. Oh, take away the wrinkles, you know.
And if we move into those ghettos that you were talking about in Florida, no wonder younger people don't respect
How
the
can
elders,
we
right?
create a connection between all the generations?
Yeah.
This
Yes.
is, you want to?
I was wondering if you could help me out here. Have you heard of Bob's great idea? And I can't remember his last name. And he wrote In Over Our Heads. He's a developmental psychologist in Harvard.
I know the title, but
Yeah.
Bob Keegan.
Bob Keegan.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes, I know.
And what is called Bob's great idea is that the reason people live longer is not because of, it is of course of medicine, but that's not the main idea. The main idea that there's more older people and they live longer is because the world now needs older people.
Oh, yeah.
And the wisdom we have gathered in all the long life by doing so much errors and falling so often into the sand. And we encourage young people not to give up. the challenges, and sometimes it seems really insurmountable, but they are, and they enrich your wisdom,
Okay.
really.
And research has found that the most important aspect of getting older or extending the length of your life is to have purpose.
Purpose, exactly, and that's
So
what we
by far
are
the
looking
most
for,
important
and invite you to co-create a community where we can explore that. We have created so far a Facebook group. It is a very young baby. It's when he realized that he might have still 30 years to live. And what do we do in these 30 years? So join us, okay, and thank you.